Good morning, everyone. Yes, good morning. Shall we start the session? Larry, where are the other students? Okay, wait for another students. So let's start the session. In the last class, we have discussed with the SDLC, that is the chapter number 2, what are the various SDLC steps that is followed for the system development life cycles. And we have discussed some topics like the objective, introduction, what are the various stages that is used in the life cycle. We have covered three stages in the last class. One is the requirement gathering, that is the project selection, then feasibility study, then analysis. So we've discussed about the introduction, we've discussed about the objective and the three stages, that is the requirement gathering, feasibility study, and the analysis part. Today, I'm going to continue with the same steps, but with the new step, that is the fourth number step, designing part. Right. So what is the main objective? So how to build the computer-based information system? What are the various categories by which we can build the information system? What are the different steps in the system development life cycle? That is, what are the various stages that is used in the system development life cycle? That is SDLC. What prompts users to change their request? So what are the various prompts that the user want to change their request? And what are the various components of feasibility study? What are the various parts of feasibility study? Then what are the factors to consider in a candidate system, and how to plan and control for the system success? So first part is the introduction, that the analyst gives a system development project meaning and the direction, and the candidate system is approached against the analyst that had a thorough understanding or true understanding of the user needs and the problem that is required for the system analyst, and there is a viable solution that is worked out and then communicate the same that is used for the system analyst, and the candidate system often cut across the boundaries of the users in the organization that is also required for the system development life cycle. Then there is the stages of the system development life cycle, that consist of the set of the activities that the analysts, designers, and the users carried out to develop and implement the information system. And the various stages then in the business are very closely related to each other. Even in the order of the steps in these activities is difficult to determine. There are various stages that is required, that is very closely related to each other for the system development life cycle, that is the stages of system development life cycle. So the first part is the project selection, that the problem is solved or it is okay, or problem is before it can be solved. And the basis for the candidate system, it's recognition of the need for improving an information system or a procedure. That is how to improve, that is either to improve the new system or either to make a new system or improve an information system. For example, a supervisor may want to investigate the system flow in the purchasing, and the bank president getting the complaints about the long line in the drives, that there may be a multiple queues that is required in any system. So that queue will be removed, that queue will be investigated by using the system development life cycle. And this need leads to a preliminary survey or an initial investigation to determine whether an alternative system can solve the problem or not. And it entails looking into the duplication of the effort, bottlenecks, inefficient existing procedures, or whether parts of the existing system would be a candidate key for computerization or not. Then next is the impetus for the system change, that is why there is a requirement for the system change, why there is a requirement for the updations in the system, that is the existing system. So ideas for the change may also come from within the organization, that may be from top management, from the users and the analysts, that is system analysts. And as an organization changes its operations or faces advance in computer technology, someone within the organization may feel the need to update existing applications or improve the procedures. And these are the few examples by which we can improve the system. That is, an organization acquires another organization, a local bank branches into the suburbs, then department spends 80% of its budget in 1 month. Then this is the diagram that shows or what is the role of, and the status of the analyst as a profession, that adds the credibility to the suggestions made. There is the organization, there is the source of the system ideas, that is the environment based, that is the organization based, top management, middle management, moving force that is used for the government, consumers, union, competition. Then we are talking about the feasibility study. That means it is a study that initialize that do that whether to update the existing system or whether to go for a new system. So it's depends on the requirement of the users. So whether to update the new system, existing system, or whether to create a or whether to develop a new system. So depending on the result of the initial investigation, the survey is expanded to the more feasibility study, that is a test of a system proposal according to its workability and its impact on the organization, ability to meet the user needs, and the effective use of the resources. And that focus on three major questions. What are the three major questions? First is, what are the users' demonstrable needs and how does a candidate system meet them? What resources are available for given candidate systems? What is the likely impact of the candidate system on the organization? So first is, what are the users' demonstrable needs? Then what resources are required? And what is the impact of the candidate system on the organization? So these are the 3 points that are the major question that is available in the feasibility study. And the objective of feasibility study is not to solve the problem, but to acquire a sense of its scope. That means it's not to solve each and every problem automatically, but it acquires a sense. That means how to, or what is the main scope, either to improve the existing system or either to develop a new system. And the result is a formal proposal that is written in the documentation part, that is either in the formal report or the policy or the documentation. And what is we can say what comprises of this report, that is statement of the problem, then summary of the finding and the recommendations, then details of the finding, and last one is conclusions and recommendations. Next one is analysis, that is a detailed study of the various operations that is performed by a system and their relationship within and outside of the organization. So within the organization and outside the organization, what is the role of the system? If I develop this system, what is the impact on the outside world as well as the inside the organization? For example, analysis defines the boundaries of the system and determine whether or not a system is acceptable to the users, and what are the various available files, decision points, and a transaction that is handled by the present system. And there are few ways, criteria by which we can gather the information by which we can use analysis part. One is a DFD, interviews, on-site observation, questionnaires are the examples of the analysis tools. And interviews is a commonly used tool in analysis, and it requires the special skills and the sensitivity to the subjects being interviewed. And once analysis is completed, the analyst has a clear understanding what is to be done. Now, next part is designing part. That means we are moving from the logical part to the physical aspect of the life cycle, that is the system design. And this is the most creative and the challenging phase of system development life cycle, that is known as the system design. And design means a final system and a process by which it is developed. So that means what is a final system that looks like after the implementation, and the process by which it is developed, that is represented in the system design phase. And it refers to the technical specifications that will applied in implementing the candidate system. It also includes the construction of the program and the testing of the program, how big the or how should the problem be solved. That is also a decision that is taken out in the system design. These are the various steps that is represented within that with the help of the flow chart. There is the output design, then input design, file design, processing design. So these are the 4 types of design. Output design means how the output looks like, how we can represent in a pictorial representation. Now with the help of the pictorial representation, that is output design. Input design means what are the types of input that is given to the system. Then file design, what are the various file format that is used in the system design. Then processing design, what are the various steps or what are the rules that is followed for designing a system. That means how to convert the input into the output. And this is the detailed system documentation. Then design submit for the approval, then design accepted, test program, implementation phase. So these are the few steps in the system design. Now let's see one by one each and every step. The first step is to determine how the output will be produced or is to be produced and in what format. That is, what are the various ways by which output will be produced and what is the main format, that is either in the DFDs, either in the flowchart by developing a system. So the first step is to determine how the output is to be produced and in what format, and the samples of the output are also presented in this one. Now second part is, this is the first step, that then second one is input data and the master files. Master file means database files have to be designed to meet the requirements of the proposed output. So first of all, define the output, then what are the various input that is given for describing that or achieving that output, what are the various master file, that is databases have to be designed to meet the requirements of the output or proposed output. Then what are the various processing phases are handled, or how the processing will be handled through program construction and testing. That includes a list of the program that is needed to meet the system objectives and complete the documentation. That means a processing phase that are handled through the program construction and the testing, that includes a list of the program that is needed to meet the system's objective and complete the documentation. And finally, details related to the justification of the system and estimate of the impact of the system or the candidate system on the user and the organization are controlled or documented by using the management as a step of the improvement. So these are the few steps that is used in the designing phase. Now, at last, there is a final report that is prior to the implementation phase. So this is before the implementation phase, that includes the flowcharts, records layout, reports layout, and a workable plan for implementing the candidate system. That is how to implement onto the system or the user's desk, that is represented either using the flowchart, either using the record layout, report layout, workable plan, and so on. And there is information on the personnel, money, hardware, facilities, and their estimated cost must also be available. At this point, projected cost must be close to the actual cost of the implementation. There are different firms, or we can say there are some firms in which there is a separate group of the programmer that do the programming, that do the coding part, whereas some firms also employ the analyst that is also acts as a programmer who do analysis, design, as well as do the coding of the program. So it depends on the status of the organization, whether it is a big organization, small organization, and so that do the analysis phase, that is the designing phase, and so on. For this criteria, we assume that two separate persons carried out the analysis and the programming, and there are certain functions, though, that the analyst must perform while programs are being written, and operating procedures must also be developed. So we have finished with the designing phase. So any doubts, anyone in the designing phase? So the next phase after the designing is the implementation, that is less creative than the system design. So why it is less creative? Because this is only the implementing the system on the user desk, nothing else. This is less creative as compared to the system design, and system design is very creative because they are using the diagrams, DFDs, flowcharts, everything in the system design. And it is concerned with the user's training side preparation and the file conversion. And when the candidate system is linked to the terminal or the remote site, the telecommunication network and the test of the network along with the systems are also included under the implementations. That is also included under the implementations. That may be a terminal site, that may be a remote site, that may be a telecommunication network, that may be a test of the networks. And during the final testing, user acceptance is testing. So during the final testing, there's a user acceptance. Where if the user is accepted the test, there's a user acceptance that is tested, followed by a user training. And depending on the nature of the system, extensive user training may be required. And convergence usually takes place at about the same time from the users that is being trained or later. That means we are giving the training to the users after the implementations, and there is a user acceptance tested whether the user is accepting the system or not. And in the extreme, the programmer is viewed as someone who ought to be isolated from any other part of the system development. And programming in itself or its itself design work, however, we are using the parameter of the candidate system that should be modified as a result of the programming efforts. And programming provides a reality test for the assumptions made by the analyst. It is therefore a mistake to exclude the programmers from the initial design phase. Now, next category is also the subpart of the implementation phase, that is the post-implementation and the maintenance. Post means after the implementation. So after the implementation phase is completed and the user stuff is adjusted to the changes created by the candidate system, the next step is the evaluation and the maintenance. Evaluation means evaluate whether the system works efficiently or perfectly at the user desk. And maintenance means if there is any changes, if there is any we can say the loopholes, then the maintenance part will be carried out after the implementation of the system. Like any system, there is an aging process that requires a periodic maintenance of the hardware and the software. For example, the software must be outdated. That needs to be updated. Hardware parts are something, for example, the motherboard is corrupted. Anything that is corrupted, that is a maintenance of the hardware and the software. One is also the adaptations. So one is the evaluation, then maintenance, then adaptation. Adaptation means changing to the new environment. For example, nowadays we are using the nowadays we are using the .NET or the Java or the PHPs or the SAP, but before this we are using the C or the C++. There is updation in the changes, there is adaptation to the new environment, that is also one of the implementation phase. And hardware also includes the periodic maintenance to keep in the true with the design specification. So that is not that only the software will be updated or require the maintenance, no, but the hardware also requires the periodic maintenance to keep in tune with the design specifications. And the importance of the maintenance is to continue to bring the new system to the standard. So the new system to the standard, that is also maintainable, that is also maintained to bring the new system to standards. And using user priorities, changing in the organization requirements or environmental factors also used for the system enhancement. Next is a project termination. So a system project may be dropped at any time prior to the implementation. So if I'm not satisfied being a user, I'm not satisfying. So at any time that is dropped prior to the implementation, although it becomes more difficult and costly when it goes past the design phase. It is very costly to remove, to drop, to terminate the project, but it's not in our hand, it's the user's requirements. So it can be dropped at any time prior to the implementation, although it becomes more difficult for the programmer, for the analyst, for the organization, we can say, when it goes past the design phase. And generally, projects are dropped if after a review process, it is learned that. So what are the various, we can say the criteria by which or on which we can terminate the project? Whenever there is a changing objective or the requirement of the user cannot be met by the existing design. For example, a user gives a requirement and system analyst is not able to cope up with the requirements, and he or she made the system that is totally different from the user's requirement. Totally different means that the user is not satisfied in simple terms. So that means the requirement of the users cannot be met by the existing design. In this case, we can terminate the system. It will make a huge loss to the organization also. Or benefits realized from the candidate system do not justify the commitment to the implementation. So if there's a benefit that is realized from the candidate system that do not justify the commitment to the implementation, then there is a sudden change in the user's budget or an increase in design cost. It is also one of the case, there's a sudden change in the user's budget. So the user budget is changed, that is not pay out more or increase in the design cost beyond the estimate that is made during the feasibility study. So if I made any specification, if I made any cost budget during the feasibility study, and that is going, in actuality it is going beyond the feasibility study estimate. So this is also case when we, or when the system analyst terminate the project. Then the project greatly exceeds the time and the cost schedule. That means whatever we plan in the feasibility study, that is not met. So in these cases, we are terminating the project. That is a project termination. So first one is changing objective or the requirements of the user cannot be met. Then benefits realize from the candidate system to not justify the commitment. Then there is a sudden change in the user's budget or increase in the design cost that is beyond the estimate during the feasibility study. Then project generally exceeds the time and the cost schedule. And in each case, either of the case, a system project may be terminated at the user's request. That is, a system project may be terminated at the user's request, and in contrast, the project termination is the new system failure. There are many reasons why a new system does not meet the user requirement. Users' requirements were not clearly defined or understood. One of the main reasons. The users was not, or the users or user was not directly involved in the crucial phases of the system development. The analyst, programmer, or both were inexperienced. They are new to the organizations. Then system analyst had to work under the time constraints. So that is, in the hurry, he or she developed the systems, and consequently not enough to went into the feasibility study and the design. And training is also poor, that is, the user training was poor. Then existing hardware proved inefficient or deficient to handle the new application. So whatever the hardware, whatever the software that is using, that is not perfect, or that is not fruitful to handle the new applications. Then the new system left users in other departments out of touch with the information that the old system has provided. So the new system that left the users in other departments, that is out of the touch with the information that the old system has provided. So whatever the system that is provided, whatever the information that is provided by the old or the new system, that is left in the departments out of the touch. Then the new system was not user friendly. This is also case why the new system is not acceptable. Then users change their requirements. So users also change their requirement and each and every case. Then user staff are hostile. And so these are the various lists that is required for the more courses. But the important point is that the advances in the computer system and the software makes life easier for the analyst, and success of our system project depends on the experience, create the ability. So it depends on the system analyst 99%. Why? Because if the system analyst is experience, that have a creative ability and the knowledge of the subject, knowledge of the programming, knowledge of the hardware, software, everything, so that makes a new system as a fruitful system. And there is also support from the user staff, from the whole organization. That is not that only the system analyst is the culprit, but the managers are also culprit, because they are not providing the facilities to the system analyst. And so the conclusion or the crux is that the analyst must be skilled in the state of the art, that may be in the hardware and the software, as well as how to deal with the people. Deal with the people means how to deal with the organization. If there is any we can say the shortage, so he or she asks the manager to give the resources. After taking the resources, he or she make the fully developed system to meet the user's requirement. But if everything is available in the organization and there is no shortage of the resources, so after this, if there is So after this, if the users or if the user is not satisfied, so each or every blame or whole blame goes to the system analyst. So we have covered with this one, we have covered with the various stages of the SDLC. So we have covered with the specification, that is the requirements. We have covered with the feasibility study. We have covered with the analysis. We have covered with the design. We have covered with the implementation, and after that there is a routine maintenance or adaptations and the maintenance. So any doubts, anyone in these steps of the SDLC, or what is the meaning of SDLC? Any doubt, anyone? So just do one